Hi, everyone. Krista McGregor. I am your local health coach and the proud owner of Key Elements and my clean eating, clean living programs. I am just so excited today to have with me this is all part of my interview series, people who have made a major impact on my life. And so um, Chris Grosso, who is an author, he is a public speaker, he is a spiritual advisor, and has written 2 books. His latest book is called Everything Mind, What I've Learned About Hard Knocks, Spiritual Awakening, and the Mind-Blowing Truth of It All. And his first book, which is Indie Spiritualist. This is the book that really changed my life. So, Chris, I'm just so thrilled that you took the time. I know you travel, quite extensively, have a very busy schedule, and you made a little bit of time for me and my clients, and I'm just so thrilled that you're here. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and a high five for getting the pronunciation of my last name right. 9 out of 10 times people don't, and I don't mind it. I find it funny, but bonus points. So thank you for taking the time to look into that.
Yeah. So, Chris, I think what is so powerful about you and your mission and your passion is your story. It's really what brings us to our authentic selves, right? It's what allows us to be what the world needs us to be and what the universe intended us to be. So I thought what would be great is if you could tell me, what is an indie spiritualist and how did you find your passion, find your calling for doing the work that you do?
Sure. In a nutshell, indie spiritualist initially didn't mean anything, to be honest. It was the name of a website. It was a play on words. I'm into independent culture, like indie music, arts, movies, things of that nature. And obviously spirituality is something I'm passionate about. I mashed the 2 words together, started a website, and there you had it. And then a few years later, I ended up signing a book deal, and the publisher wanted to name it Indie Spiritualist. I had a different name in mind, but I agreed, and it was at that point that I was like, wow, all right, so I guess I should figure out what an indie spiritualist means then, because I'll be asked it in interviews. And really, I didn't want to concoct something, so I looked at a lot of the people I'd been connecting with through my website and that were, kind of on the same wavelength as I was. And I think that one of the common factors was it was really people that were just celebrating who they were at the core of their heart, being very honest to themselves, really appreciating their uniqueness, their individuality. And then they also happen to have an interest in spirituality. So a lot of people have misunderstood it as, you have to be alternative or punk rock or tattooed or, big holes in your ears because that's how I look. But that's not the case at all. I say that you could work on, I guess, Wall Street. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, but you can be wearing a suit and tie to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And as long as you're honoring whatever the truth, in your heart is, there you go, rock on. Like, that's an indie spiritualist to me. Other people defined it other ways, and that's cool. But in a nutshell, there you have it. And then what led me to my work, my passion, a lot of drugs, a lot of jail cells, a lot of waking up, hovering over a toilet bowl, a lot of just the really ugliness of life that brought me to my knees several times and left me at a place where it was either really clean up your act, really go inside and start doing that uncomfortable work that's been keeping myself sick and suffering for so long, or die. Just go ahead and die. Just end it. And I was at that place where I really was ready to die, even after a couple of suicide attempts that were more calls, not calls for, just more attention seeking than anything. But they were serious enough to end me in psych hospitals. But this was the first time I was really, truly ready to die. And a series of events happened. I ended up in a rehab program, like probably my 8th, 9th, 10th. I lost count in New Jersey. And I just met some great clinicians. I read a book called Fighting Freedom by a guy named Jarvis J. Masters. It really deeply impacted me. And I came back to Connecticut after a few months for the first time, really with the surrender and the willingness to go inside and do that. that difficult work of really sifting through the wreckage of my past, and again, the things that were keeping me sick and suffering because I wasn't willing to work at them. So that's really kind of how it led there. And then I started to write a little bit about my life experience on some websites, and I met an author online who introduced me to her literary agent, and she liked what I wrote. I signed a contract with her agency. About a year and a half or a year or so after that, I was signing a book deal with Simon & Schuster for Indie Spiritualist, and then I got to start speaking at some events and traveling, and then my second book came out and more events, and here I am. In a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell, because this book is just packed with so much information. I almost look at this as a memoir. Would you agree that it's a lot of it?
Oh yeah, definitely part memoir. It's not full, but I didn't want to write it like from birth to present day. You know, there's definitely a bunch of shorter vignettes littered throughout it that kind of retell a lot of my history. But in between that, you know, are more current day things. Definitely, I wanted to put in a lot of reader takeaways. There's a lot of practices. So, you know, memoirs, if it's someone you're really interested in, cool. But I didn't want it just to be about me. I wanted it to be something the reader read and really not only inspired them, but gave them tools, you know.
And it sure does.
Put into action. Thank you. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people I have purchased this book for, and that, or I have given to, you know, in the work that I do as a health coach. Yeah. So, you know, I highlighted a few parts of the book that I just thought were profound for me. And I work with a lot of people in the work that I do in my office here in Glastonbury, and we discover that part of their roadblock really is addiction, and whether it be to relationships or alcohol or drugs, money, sex, whatever it is, that it's really first discovering it and then learning about ourselves and the journey.
Yeah.
So I love when you wrote "A Tempest That Shattered My Heart." And this is really in the preface. And when you said, "Every part of my physical self was ready to die and welcomed the thought of death, but inside a small flame flickered. It was very faint, very deep, yet it was enough that no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, I couldn't. It wouldn't let me." Mm. And then you wrote "Hope." And I get choked up reading this over and over again, because this really, when I describe what you wrote here in my own words, is that place between not being courageous enough to really, or brave enough, I don't want to call it courageous, but brave enough to really commit suicide and die, but feeling dead, like feeling like your life is over. There's no more to it. And that is exactly where I was in my fork in the road and my turn, and started my recovery process with getting help.
Yeah.
So it was so profound that you could put into words, and I'm sure people tell you this all the time, you know, how I'm feeling or how I have felt, and I hear from my clients how they feel. So that was just beautiful.
Thanks. You know, I appreciate that you could resonate with it, but it's heartbreaking when people tell me, I know I understood I was there, because I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I don't think I have a worst enemy, but I wouldn't wish that emptiness, that place of despair and just brokenness on anyone. You know, addiction or not, you know, people don't have to be addicted to a substance to experience this complete just meaninglessness, this desire to die. I was just down at a rehab facility in Bethlehem, Connecticut on Sunday doing a workshop. There's a place called Newport Academy, and it's a place for teenagers who deal with substance abuse or depression and suicidal ideations, things of that nature. And I had all I could do to keep myself from crying as I'm listening to these boys and girls, you know, ages 12 to 18, sharing about multiple suicide attempts, sharing about what I wrote about in that book without them reading it. You know, them basically telling me my story at such a young age kills me, you know, but then there is hope. There's always hope. You know, there's countless stories of people who are able to find the courage, the bravery, the passion, rekindle that and turn their lives around. And that's not to say that life becomes magical and perfect, because there are still days this day that are absolutely terrible. And there are even, on rare occasions, sometimes that I'll have like that old suicidal thought come through, which boggles my mind. It's like, wow, where did that come from? But there's still stuff. It's a process, it's just a
Absolutely.
continuous showing up for ourselves and doing the work that we can do in any given day to continue the healing, and then helping others as well.
Yeah, absolutely the truth. So there was another part of your book where you write, spirituality has become fluffy and watered down. So you are, a spiritual director, and I know you explain more of this in the book, but why don't you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah. So I've calmed down on that a bit through the years. Like, I stand by what I wrote. Absolutely. I don't dwell on it so much anymore, but it does bother me, because spirituality, if we get really like to the core of it, is a path, a means, a series of practices, whatever tradition or lineage you're interested in, or lack thereof. You don't need to be a Buddhist or Christian or Hindu to meditate or do yoga. But, we take on these various practices that, to me, I would consider spiritual, because they're connecting us with our inner selves. So when we're really doing that authentically, what we're doing is actually peeling away these layers and getting, reconnected with ourselves, the part of us that we had lost. Recovery. We're recovering that part of ourselves that we lost. And we're healing, and we're doing this work, and it's difficult and ugly and messy, but beautiful at the same time. What's happened, and it's not new. It's not that this is new to the spiritual marketplace, because you can look as far back as the 60s and it was there. But it's complete, as Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, an old Buddhist scholar, he called it spiritual materialism. He wrote a profound book on it. And what ends up happening is a lot of people take on a role of being a spiritual person. So instead of peeling away these layers and going in and doing this difficult work, they start to spiritualize their ego and actually pile on more of an identification, So look at me, I'm spiritual, I do this, I do that. And I mean, to some extent, I believe most of us do that in our spiritual journey. I know early on, I certainly did. I wore the malas and I learned the language, and I still wear malas. There's nothing wrong with that. But, I definitely wanted to look the part and sound the part, and that was more important to me than really the practices. And that's a big part of what the spiritual business and marketplace is today, is really catering to that and making it hip and fancy and cool. And it's just, it kind of bums me out. I know it sounds a little judgy, and I'm sure it is. Some people will say, whatever gets someone's foot in the door, and then they can find their way. And to a certain extent, cool, I hear what they're saying. But a friend of mine, and this is an extreme example, but a friend of mine, his name's Jeff Brown, a brilliant writer, and he was sharing with me a story about a friend of his. He calls it the New Cage movement. He's even more outspoken about it than I am. And he talked about a friend of his who got very involved in this, and she struggled with depression, which things like that often bring us to the spiritual path, depression, anxiety, whatever. Mm-hmm. So she's working with these practices for 2 or 3 years, and really it's just kind of like putting a Band-Aid on the wound. It's not doing anything to heal it. And she ends up committing suicide. Because she, believed that through these practices she was really going to heal, and it did nothing for her. So again, I know that that's an extreme example, but that, it can lead to things like that, or just to deeper depression if we're not really truly going inside and doing this work, which most of it doesn't. Well, let's scratch the surface a little. Let's do some easy stuff, but let's not really dig deep, because that's when it gets uncomfortable, and uncomfortable doesn't sell books. It's not marketable. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. So I have to tell you this, I love that you swear a lot, because I don't typically swear with my clients, but if you know my husband or anyone around me at home, I'm of Irish descent, and the F word tends to be just a normal word that gets thrown around. So I love when you say that you're so fucking perfect in your imperfections. And you say, I'm so serious when I say that. Our quirks, the things that we often look at with disgust, they are the things that make us unique and completely amazing. While that sentiment may sound like an after-school special to some, I wholeheartedly mean it. I love that you are so fucking perfect in your imperfections.
We are. Yeah, we absolutely are. And it's funny because I don't swear a lot when I'm not writing. I find when I write, though, just emphasis, it comes out, especially when I'm writing something that otherwise without a a swear word I might find sounds a bit too fluffy, so I want to jolt the reader a little bit. I find that sometimes helps. But it's also interesting that like people have such hangups about what is and is not spiritual. You know, they're so dogmatic and rigid, and that just to me speaks volumes about what's going on in their life. And I used to get like defensive. I mean, this is several years ago, but I learned that, you know what, that's their business. That just has nothing to do with me. No one owns spirituality. No one can tell you what is or is not spiritual. We are the only ones having our own direct experience. So I am the only one who will ever know truly what is spiritual in my life, as are you, and as is anybody. And even at the end of the day, spirituality itself is just a word. It's this concept, and we create and attach all of these ideas and beliefs to it. And if other people aren't, fitting into that mold that we're created, then, we start to judge them, and we're projecting our own shadow shit onto them. And again, so it's about the other person. And it's been interesting to watch it, though, because, I meet a lot of curmudgeon-y spiritual people in the world. They're so saintly and anyways.
Yeah. So what I love about what you wrote about perfect in your imperfections goes along with what you were just saying, with the definition of perfect. Like, is there anything really perfect? And then I answer the question and say, it's all perfect. All of it's perfect.
Yeah.
Just as it is, it's absolutely perfect. So that took me, I'm 49, that took me over 40 years to learn. And being a perfectionist almost killed me. So thinking I had to look perfect, act perfect, be perfect, have a perfect house, have the perfect job, earn the perfect amount of money, be the perfect mother, be the perfect wife, be the perfect friend and sister. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know I was doing that. I didn't even know that was what I was doing. And perfectionism brought me to the depths of my addiction, and the depths of my addiction almost killed me. So I just rooted right back to perfectionism. And so that part of your book was profound to me as well, and helped me to realize that everything is perfect. And especially, in my opinion, the imperfections are what are just more perfect than other things.
It's really well said. Thanks for sharing that about yourself. I appreciate it, because it's so true. And going back to the beliefs, I mean, that's what we do is everyone, it just is a kind of natural human thing to compare and contrast. And then we also, we judge things as good, we judge things as bad. But what I might consider good, you might consider bad, and vice versa. But so we place all these beliefs and meanings onto what simply is. Underneath, if we take all the thoughts out, all the beliefs, all the concepts, which is all just mind-created stuff that comes, stays a little while, and then goes. It's completely impermanent. The one thing that remains is just this. Right now, what is. With no labels, no judgments. It's literally just this right now. We place the judgments, and we're the one who project our experience of good, bad, perfect, imperfect onto it. But when we learn to gradually start laying aside all that, or not take it so seriously anymore, the thoughts are still going to come, but we don't have to feed into them as much. We can simply watch them rather than identifying. Then it's a much easier way to live, because it's like, okay, you know what? This just is what it is. It might not feel good right now, but it is what it is. I don't feel good, or I feel great. It is what it is. This too shall pass. Everything's impermanent. All the great teachers from the various traditions said it in their own way. So,
yeah, and what you just said is really how I came to resolve a lot of my eating disorder issue. Was exactly that. Just being able to witness what was going on in the moment and stop trying to judge. When I look in the mirror and I would see a body that was 30 pounds underweight, I would still think it was overweight, ugly, disgusting. And that is because I was trying to be perfect. I was trying to reach that perfectionism again, and it led me into anorexic eating.
Wow.
So what you just described, it was really became the tool for me to be able to, I don't want to say overcome, because I don't think I overcame that problem, but I do know that is, was a tool that helped save my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I also love that you wrote, when we stop ourselves from running away from the discomfort, natural healing does occur. And I love this because that takes place in our bodies. And this is what I teach with clean eating and nutrition and really understanding how foods work in your body.
Right.
And this in our body regenerates and it heals. It's a healing machine.
It is, absolutely. Right.
Yeah. And you wrote this, it's just beautiful for the mind and body.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is our natural tendency as human beings is to avoid pain at all costs. And I get it. It's part of our survival mechanism. We have the triune brain, the three brains, and in the oldest, most powerful one is what's considered the reptilian brain. And that's the fight or flight response, and that's what often it's at the unconscious level for us. And it really is what's a determining factor in most of our actions. So that's part of why we don't want to feel pain. It's instinctual for us. And that's when we start to feel uncomfortable. We turn to food or sex or shopping or video games or whatever, all things that in moderation are fine. But for many of us, they aren't in moderation, and also then they become a means of aversion to this pain. And instead of it coming up and us being with it and using whatever practice, whether it's a trauma practice, EDMR. It could be trauma release exercises, meditation, yoga. There's no shortage of them. But working with it skillfully in a nurturing kind of way, we just numb it out, we push it back down. And like I said earlier, that's the stuff, in my case and many others, that keeps us sick and suffering in our own ways. So once we show up for it, though, that's when that natural healing can begin to occur.
That's right. And I think another thing, just to add to what you said, is that many of us don't know the tools. We don't have the tools because a lot of us don't know where to find them. We don't know they exist. I know I didn't until I hit my bottom, really, until I had to choose death or living and figuring out, making a desperate phone call that saved my life and took me into recovery. The tools are there. I think that's why one of the reasons why I do what I do is to be able to let people know. And same with you, we have this in common, to let people know what the tools are and where to find them. Even if I'm not the expert in them, there are tools and
they're absolutely
in the right direction.
Yeah, I would tell anyone who's listening that, make Google a friend, make YouTube a friend, make your local library a friend, a facility such as yours. I'm the spiritual director at a wonderful facility called Toivo by Advocacy Unlimited, not far from you, right in Hartford.
I love Toivo.
Yeah, and they do so many incredible things, and they're all free. Of course you can donate, but it's free because these are people just like me that went through the ringer in their own ways. We've come out of the other side, and all we want to do is help others to truly heal in their lives and give back. So God bless a facility like that and the work you're doing, that these things exist to share the tools and help others to heal, integral healing, mind, body, spirit, holistic healing. Yeah. So for anyone watching, I'm saying Google, YouTube, and I'm guessing a lot of people are in Connecticut. So your facility in Glastonbury, Toivo, and Hartford, there's no shortage of resources out there for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I know we only have a couple of minutes left, and I could talk to you forever, but your time is limited.
It is.
So, the last part of the book that I'm going to talk about is where you said, I held the pain with the same love and compassion with which a mother holds a crying newborn baby. And oh my God, again, I could cry just reading this. And I have cried while reading this, of how you practice compassion for your own pain. And you held it like a baby. You were able to witness it and comfort it in a way of just being able to let it be.
Yeah, I'll actually give your viewers, this is a very important practice that I use in my life, and it's inspired by, I was listening to a Thich Nhat Hanh Dharma talk. He's a Vietnamese monk, and in it he had said something to the effect of, holding our pain or our anger. I don't remember verbatim, but the same way a mother would a newborn baby. And it was like a bell went off in my head, and that thought kept popping into my head for the next few months. And then I kind of created this little practice out of it that I was using on my own, and it worked really well. And then I wrote an article about it on Elephant Journal's website. And that was years ago, and it's been shared, I don't know, over 1 million times, and tons of wonderful comments from people who've used it themselves. So that's so cool to see it. It's not just me that it helps. So this is a very condensed version, but for your viewers,
yeah,
if you become aware of something, that's causing you any kind of mental, physical, emotional discomfort, if you have the time to do this, the practice is, and you can always go back to it if you're at work and you can't do it in the moment, maybe you have a break coming up, you can do it in your car. But essentially what you do is, instead of pushing the thoughts and feelings down, you let them come up, which right there is pretty counterintuitive to what we normally do. As we've already discussed, you want to shove it out, you want to eat candy, you want to, just escape however you can. But let it come up. Let the thoughts say whatever they're going to say. Let the feelings feel however they're going to feel. But do so from a place of an impartial witness. So don't feed into those thoughts of saying you're a scumbag, you're a jerk, you're a bad person. Just watch them happening. Allow them to come up, allow the feelings to come up. And after you do this for a few minutes, this is kind of an intuitive practice. I don't say do it for 1-2 minutes. Do it for however long feels right to you. You'll know. And once you feel like it's kind of the energy of it has played itself out, then just like the mother example, you actually imagine yourself taking whatever comes to mind. So if it's a sentence, a word, an image, several images, whatever, again, intuitively you feel needs to be held, you imagine yourself wrapping it in a blanket and then holding it like a mother would a newborn baby. And for some people, that holding it gesture, you don't have to do this, though you can. I don't know if you're just going to see that. But if that feels too personal, then you can still wrap it, place it in a baby carriage and rock the carriage back and forth, so you're still tending to it. It's just not so close. And essentially what you're doing right there is, again, you're opening your heart to it. And it might help to bring awareness into your heart center. And that in and of itself often naturally would just create a sense of loving kindness and compassion and warmth. Not always, but often for many people it does. So you're just holding this with compassion and care. And then you talk to it. You say whatever you feel like you need to say to it, but it's a loving conversation. You let it know that you're there for it, that your heart is open to it, that you are sorry that it's felt unheard and unloved, and you are there in this moment to be with it and to hold it and care for it. It's not alone anymore. So you're recovering it. You're recognizing it's a part of you that's been repressed for so long, but now it's here, and you're just giving it your attention. And the final step is then you just really sit with it for, I find that usually a minute or less. That's all it takes. It's often, for me, like I have this image of the blanket, and the blanket just kind of falls in on itself because whatever I wrapped in it is gone. It just needed to be, given some loving kindness and attention. Yeah. Sometimes it might take 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes it might come back again a week, a month later. You just sit with whatever it is again. But in a nutshell, that's the practice. And so we're just flipping it. Instead of pushing it down, we're letting it come up, and we're opening our hearts to it because it's a part of us. It's there with us. That's a part of us. And it's a part that feels unloved because it is unloved. We're pushing it down. Mm-hmm. Who wants to love the pain? I know it sounds weird, but once we start to open our hearts to it, that's how that natural healing that we were talking about occurs.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Cool. I know I have practiced that, and I find myself oftentimes in the morning when I meditate now, because I've read the book and taken some of the tools, I put my hands just right over my chest area here, similar to what you described.
Yeah.
And I try to witness what might still be there so that I can try to almost prevent anything from happening during the day that might be stuck.
Yeah.
So I love that. I mean, just the tools that you've given in this book are amazing. And I think that anyone and everyone can practice them easily. So,
yeah, that's what I try to do, make it as accessible from any walks of life, all walks of life. That's my passion, just to help, show up, help others heal as I'm still healing myself, Yeah,
thank you. So before we end our time together, do you, I know you have events and talks and books and all kinds of great stuff happening in your life. Is there, and I love that you mentioned Toivo, because it's so close to me. And is there anything else or anything that you want to mention? How can people find you? How can they see where your events are? How can they find out how to get your books?
Yeah, thanks. The website is the indiespiritualist, one word.com. And then, my Facebook, you can find the books on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, wherever. And all the links are there. There's one event, I don't know when this will air, but if it happens to air before September 10th, I am doing an event at Toivo with the lovely people there, Darren Drum, Kelvin Young, and Hillary Bryant. Four of us are going to come together and do an introduction to holistic healing workshop, which is from 1 to 5. But otherwise, yeah, you can find out whatever I'm up to at the webpage. And there's a contact if anyone wants to get in touch and say hi. And yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much again for taking out some time for me. I appreciate it. And for my clients, I mean, just spreading the word of how to get help when we're suffering, whether it be through addiction or depression or anxiety or anything, that there's always people that are willing to share and help and have been through it.
Yeah, well, and thank you, Krista, for the work you're doing and everything, how you're showing up to be of service in the world. I deeply respect and honor it.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
So, we will hopefully talk again, my friend, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks. I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Take care.